enthusiasm level. And I think that's probably part of it. I was supposed to be in Dallas. Susan, I was going to attend. I had talked to Susan. I was going to attend the convention, her convention, and I had a 6:15 flight to Dallas on Saturday, and I woke up at 3:45 to catch that flight. And I got up and made my coffee, and I was sitting there checking the New York Times, and I saw this text message that said, your flight's been moved to 8:37. So I wasn't going to make these conventions, right? So I got on my car. I wasn't going to stay home. So I got in my car by myself, with 5 hours of sleep, and I drove to Austin and to Hays County and to an election also. A convention in San Antonio. And I didn't, they weren't really bad turnouts, but they weren't really heavy turnouts like we've seen in the past.
But why are people so unenthused? I am so fired up. We have got to get our Democrats elected.
Yeah, no, we do. I don't know why. I think that these Republicans have just, created such a terrible atmosphere out there and are constantly battering people for everything under the sun that they can think of, and people are just kind of turned off by politics right now. I can't understand it. Whatever it is, we need to turn it around.
I also think, people fell out of the habit. They went to that online convention last time because of COVID, and and with the gerrymandering, I'm in Senate District 2 and I've been in Senate District 16 for 10 years. And people just, I had to drive 20 some miles to Rowlett to get to my Senate District convention. And Letta and I were working, Letta did Yolen's job on it, but we both worked on it, and it was just a whole new group of people and a whole new group of things to do. So they kind of made us have to work again.
Well, and it's true. We get used to this Zoom stuff, every time you've had this meeting up in Dallas, I fly up there, right?
Right.
When I got the notice, I said, okay, I'm going to have to figure out what time I'm going to leave on a plane. Then I noticed it was Zoom. I said, oh, well, I can do it from my office. But but I've always showed up, and it's always well attended. You always have it in a church, as I recall. Well,
unfortunately, that church COVID protocols probably won't let us in until after the summer. And so, we're doing Zoom. We're trying to keep people interested. And we record it so people can look at it on our website afterwards. And we're just trying to keep people engaged and interested. And but we're glad you didn't have to fly, because flying up here, and this is probably, fingers crossed that COVID does not go crazy. Yeah. But we are hoping to have an in-person meeting in April at Rockfish, at Campbell and Coit. And we're hoping to have the candidates for Commissioner District 2, Andrew Summerman and Michelle Oker, have confirmed that they would be there. So, it's our first toe into the live thing. And if things go really bad, people start getting hospitalized and all, we will change the live thing. But, and then really being hopeful, we're hoping that as opposed to a meeting in May, which is like the Memorial Day weekend, that we will have our traditional summer party early in June, which we hope everyone will come to. So we are thinking bright thoughts.
Well, I'm glad you are, because we're planning an in-person convention in the middle of July, and it's going to be a first of its kind in a lot of different ways. For the first time in history, the co-chairs of the convention, there's an honorary chair and then two co-chairs are women. There's been one other woman chair a convention, and that's when Molly Beth was the chair, but she decided to chair the convention in El Paso because that was the time when Sanchez was running for governor, and he wanted to be the limelight. He didn't want anybody to take it away from him. So in order to avoid any problems, she just appointed herself chair. This time around, but since then and before then, the chair always appoints a chair of the convention. And so I thought about it. Well, we needed to have somebody from the Dallas area because the convention is in Dallas. And I said, well, let's make this the first, so we're gonna have two co-chairs, Julie Johnson and Representative Gonzalez, Jessica Gonzalez, and then the honorary co-chair is going to be Bernie, Congressman Eddie Bernice Johnson. I'm sorry, I got to remember a lot of names and everything that's going on. So
you've got a lot to remember.
It'll be the first time, and then we have two members of the LGBT community. That's a first, absolutely. So all the way around, and we want to kind of dedicate this convention to diversity, and spend a lot of time talking about that. We're going to have more convention time than we've ever had before. We're going to move our committee meetings, the non-SDEC meetings, to Zoom meetings so that we don't interfere with the schedule. And we've invited Hillary to be the keynote speaker. We've not gotten a response yet, but we're hoping we can get a good response on her. It's going to be a great convention. So it's going to be in person. And I know there's some people out there that are pushing for a hybrid convention, and some people in the Disability Caucus are wanting to do that because a lot of them feel that it's going to be a risky proposition to attend a high density convention and get exposed. The problem is that the hybrid convention would have to be available to everybody, not just to people with disabilities. And if you did that, there's a couple of problems. The financial cost to the convention would be enormous. Because you'd have to figure out a way to ensure that you can put screens in every single senatorial district, that you're monitoring, the people that are calling in, that are talking on the Zoom. And at the same time, you have parliamentarians who does not have access to every single person calling into every single senatorial district. It's a nightmare. And what happened last time around when we had a virtual convention was that we lost a lot of sponsors. We made a lot of money in that convention, but we only raised $250,000 in sponsorships, which is the lowest we've ever raised before, because sponsors did not want to sponsor a convention that was virtual, because all you were seeing what was on the screen. You weren't seeing the background and the banners and all that stuff of the corporations that are sponsors. And so we had to figure out different ways. It was that year that Texas was a battleground state, and there was a lot of activity going on around that. And so we got a lot of help from Hollywood. And because of that, we raised $1 million. So paid for the convention 4 times over and had money to use in the campaign. I don't know that we're going to have that opportunity anymore, because we're not going to be on virtual because of the cost associated with that. But it's going to be, we're getting a lot of pressure to try to make it a hybrid convention. It's just very hard to do. We have to change the rules. There's not enough time to do that. We need to figure out the logistics of putting together such a convention, and it would be very hard. And I think it just lowers the enthusiasm level. You need an in-person convention where everybody's yelling and screaming. Gilberto gets up there and gives a great speech like he knows how to give, and hopefully we can get somebody like Hillary B the keynote speaker and get that, situation where she's, getting everybody all, she can give a great speech. I don't know how many of y'all were in Denver when she spoke, after she lost to Obama in the primary. She gave probably the best speech of the convention, except for Obama's speech. I mean, it was really good.
Well, I know that a number of conventions, Senate District 2, we had people wanting it to be a hybrid convention as well. And we went through all of those same things. And, this was a brand new district and with brand new people putting it on. And, we certainly had a lower turnout than we wanted, but Carol is still getting people. Carol was our nominations chair, and she's still she's still getting
people signing up. Yeah,
still getting people, so that's good.
Okay, I just, at the beginning of our meetings, Gilberto, we generally allow candidates to introduce themselves, and I know we have Catalina Garcia who's here and who has asked to just say a couple words and introduce herself to our membership. So Catalina, go ahead. Unmute.
There, thank you. I did. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm Dr. Catalina Garcia, and I'm running for Trustee District 1 for Dallas College Board. And I think I'm the perfect candidate for the job, as I've been involved with the community college for about 40 years. I started mentoring and hiring students there in that time. And I'm a product of a public education from kinder to medical school. And I'm very proud of what we've done. And I want to continue to keep the community college situation like it's been quite productive. And that some of the changes are not going in the direction of keeping the quality of education at the same level. And I want to be new eyes on the situation. I bring a great deal of experience. I've been on all kinds of boards, from a Medicare advisory board to the Texas State Board of Medical Examiners and the DART board, and almost every nonprofit board in the Dallas County. So I bring a lot to it, plus running 2 small businesses on my own, not with managers, but actually doing the work myself. So I think that my experience makes me the person for the job. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, these are positions that you often don't know much about, so it's great to have a candidate come and talk to us about what they think about, right? Yes. I see one other candidate, my good friend Francine Lee. Want to talk to us, Francine?
Hi, yes, thank you for having me. Great to be on here. And thank you all so much for voting for me. So sweet. Thank you. I am your Democratic nominee for Texas Senate District 12. So I have been working Wise County. I'm working Tarrant County. I'm hoping not to focus too much time in Dallas, because you guys know me. I hope that you guys will help me get Dallas, because I do need to work Denton County, Wise County, and Tarrant County. So thank you so much. And I hope to do it again in November.
Are there any other candidates on? Yes. Go.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Cassandra Garcia Hernandez, and I'm actually running for state representative of House District 70. And so a lot of folks don't know, but House District 70 is in Collin County, but it includes City of Dallas. And that is actually the area that I come from. So I live over here off of Frankfurt and Coy. And just a little bit of background information on me. I am an attorney. I practice in civil as well as immigration law. In addition to that, I used to sit on the City of Dallas Ethics Board, which as a commissioner, which I did have to give up that position in order to run for office. And just a little bit of information about our race. I was the last candidate to jump in, but we have been hitting it hard. And in the primaries, we ended up with the most votes of any Democratic candidate. But unfortunately, we did not capture as much vote as we needed to in order to avoid a runoff. So we will be going to a runoff in May 24th. And we're just continuing to hit it very hard. We've got the most state rep endorsements of any other candidate that's running for this race. And we also have out fundraised not only all of the Democrats, but also all the Republicans for House District 70 up to present date. So we're going to continue to keep hitting it hard until November and on. And I hope that y'all will look into my race. My website's www.cas1s.fortx.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any other candidates out there? Okay, Gilberto, tell us what happens now. We've had the primaries, many of them are undecisive, but what happens now?
Well, first of all, let me encourage Ms. Hernandez to call my daughter Gina. She'd love to hear from you if you haven't reached out to her. I think she's really pushing female candidates all across the state of Texas for the legislature to join her in the legislature, so the women can take over and start running that the House as soon as possible. And in fact, they're the ones that led the quorum break up to Washington D.C. So we were very proud of all of them. So this was probably a very difficult primary for us to experience because of all the problems that occurred. But to be honest with you, I'm glad we saw them now and we know what the issues are and we know what we need to do to fix them. And I want to go through those things because it's important that we recognize that these are challenges that we can meet if we plan, if we ensure that we understand exactly what went wrong and come up with strategies on how we resolve those issues. And I want to go through this. There's a lot of problems that occurred, but there's some major ones that affected turnout and affected, I think, the results in a lot of primary elections. I don't think that we ended up getting lesser candidates as a result of that. I think we ended up with the best candidates that were out there, but still, it was something that was unfortunate and created a lot of frustration. So let's talk about the first one, which is the vote by mail program. The Republicans achieved exactly what they were trying to achieve. They got killed in the vote by mail program across the state of Texas in 2020, and they didn't like that. And so what they did is they amended the law to make it more difficult for people to vote by mail. They made it very, very difficult for people with disabilities to vote by mail, requiring them to prove their disability, which is a horrendous thing that they did, and incredibly discriminatory against people with disabilities. But they also created an ID requirement for the vote by mail application that is partially what created the problems this last time around. So that application process requires that you either provide the last 4 digits of your social security number or your driver's license. And the information that you fill out on that application has to match whatever is in the in your voter registration card on file in the county where you registered. Now, I'm not a young guy, right? I don't remember when I registered to vote.
Me either.
It probably was in Texas because I moved to Texas from I'm from the Rio Grande Valley, but I went off to law school to DC, and then I ran the legal aid program for farm workers in Colorado, and then I came back, and that's when I registered in Texas in 1981. So that's about 45 years ago that I registered to vote. That's the only card on file, if they even have it anymore, with the Cameron County Elections Office. I don't know whether I put my social security number. I don't know whether I put my driver's license number, but whatever it is, if I would have put the wrong number in there and it didn't have whatever I had filled out in my voter registration card 45 years ago, they were going to kick back my application. And that happened all across the state of Texas with people who were in exactly that position. And there was a lot of people that were not familiar with that part of the process that had been changed, and they didn't put any numbers, and their application got kicked back. That was bad enough, but what was worse about this whole thing is that the Secretary of State's office had access to every single voter's driver's license number in the state of Texas, every one of them. All they had to do was merge their files with the files in the Texas Department of Public Safety and make sure that that information went down to the counties, where we would not have had that problem. And they didn't do it. And in my opinion, they didn't do it intentionally. They were intent on creating havoc with respect to the vote by mail program to discourage people from using vote by mail, because people, it's not just about our ability to fix it, it's also and kicking people off during this primary, because it doesn't really affect them in November. But what helps them is if you discourage people from voting by mail, then they won't vote by mail, and they may not vote in person because they may not be able to vote in person. This is what they were intending to do, and they achieved it spectacularly as far as they're concerned. That created a whole bunch of problems, because the local registrars or local elections offices didn't have that driver's license number. A lot of applications were kicked back. But the other thing that they did, the more insidious thing that they did, was they prohibited, under penalty of criminal prosecution, election officials from assisting people who were voting by mail and helping them correct the innocent error that they made in their applications. So, and you saw this all across the state of Texas. You had elections administrators or county clerks receiving these applications for vote by mail program, knowing exactly what went wrong, knowing that they had access to the driver's license number right at their fingertips. They were prohibited from calling these elderly people or people with disabilities or people that were going to be out of town and saying, hey, by the way, you made a small mistake. Can you just come back here and fill out your application the right way, or we're going to send it back to you so you can bring it back to. They were prohibited from doing that. And that was just absurd. And because if they did that, the Republicans attached a criminal penalty for assisting voters. This was horrible. Then after all that mess that was created on those applications, there was a lot of people that voted, and because the application process, because the process in filling out the vote by mail application, the ballot carrier envelope, that created a whole mess of other rejections as well, of people that wanting to vote for mail. I was looking at, there's an election contest here in Hidalgo County, and the county judge there is a friend of mine, and he's getting involved in an election contest, and I was looking at the results of the election in the petition. There was 600 people in Hidalgo County whose vote by mail ballots were rejected. 600 voters who lost their vote. That doesn't include all the people whose applications were kicked back. These are people that thought they voted for the candidate they believed in, were hoping to make a difference in this election, and they were prohibited from voting because of these laws. So our job is to figure out exactly how we fix that problem, how we make sure that every senior in the state of Texas or every person with disabilities knows exactly how to fill out the application and is not afraid to go through that process. I mean, we have a choice. We can either go to people and say, let's just plan on you voting in person because this is too complicated and we don't want your application to be rejected, or we can spend a lot of time trying to figure out exactly how we're going to educate every single voter who votes by mail in this state to make sure they don't make that mistake, and also figure out a way to ensure that the local county elections office is providing also the education to the voters on that very issue to make sure that people are aware exactly what they need to do at the time that they vote by mail, and correct that problem as much as possible. That's going to take a lot of work to figure out. One of the things that the party has always done is for the last 3 or 4 election cycles, we have been the #1 state in the country, the #1 party in the state in the country that has sent out the most vote by mail applications to people with Democratic profiles. We did less this year than we have ever done before, simply because after some of the problems that happened with the executive committee right after the election in 2020, I lost my entire command staff, the executive director and all the department heads on down. So we've been hiring new people, and we've finally got a team in place that can help put together these efforts to increase the number of vote by mail applications in the state of Texas. And we're hoping to get back to the numbers that we were before next time around, and for the November election, and at the same time engage in the process of making sure people know how to do it, and teaching also election officials how to maneuver some of these laws that penalize them for helping folks. That's one big problem, and we got to fix it, and we know what it is, and we're going to spend time fixing it. The other problem, kind of related to that, and we had worked on that in 2020 during COVID, and that's the issue of recruiting election officials. This is a huge problem across the state of Texas. A lot of party organizations had a hard time recruiting people to go work at the polls for a lot of reasons. One, there was still a fear of COVID out there with a lot of people, because most of the people that work in elections as election judges and assistants are elderly people, and they're more susceptible to getting sick, and the consequences of them getting sick, obviously, from COVID sometimes can be fatal. So it wasn't as easy as before to recruit people. But the other thing that concerned them is all the rules changed significantly with respect to voting. The things that they had to know were different. They didn't want to participate in the training, and instead they said, given all these other problems, we're just as soon not going to do that. And then on top of all of that, these threats by the Republican Party in the legislation of prosecuting any election official that did the wrong thing during the process of accepting people's people to go vote at the polling places scared a lot of people off. So we had places in Harris County, in the Rio Grande Valley, and a bunch of areas across the state of Texas where they couldn't find enough people to actually work at the polls. Even in Travis County, where you always have more than enough people, they were so overloaded that in some places they didn't have enough people to go outside and attend to people that were driving that couldn't get off their vehicle because they were elderly or disabled, and they were voting out of their car because they didn't have enough to deal with the people that were actually voting in person to free somebody out to go outside to assist the voters. So these are problems. Again, we did in 2020, we spent a lot of time recruiting election workers across the state of Texas. I don't remember how many we recruited, but it was somewhere around 300,000 or 400,000 election workers across the state of Texas. We spent weeks doing that early on, knowing that that was going to be a problem for us in the state of Texas.
Gilberto, we have a question from Bob Book, who said, I saw that far fewer ballots were rejected in the rural areas. How do we know whether those election officials follow the new law? We don't. I don't know.
Well, yeah, we don't know, but we do know that in the rural areas, the Republicans are in charge of the elections, and they certainly probably are not going to. They don't have people looking over their shoulders like they have looking over our shoulders. They've got people that they like these laws that threaten prosecution, and they manipulate them, I believe, to make sure that it allows their people to go vote and makes it difficult for other people to go vote. This is the way they've always done. They're pretty blatant about it. And I've seen it in several election cycles where they'll, for example, have a polling place somewhere, and they don't even have a sign out front. And so only they know that there's voting going on there. And they get away with it because, the Secretary of State slaps them on the hand and doesn't do anything to penalize them for that kind of conduct. So it is a perpetual problem. One of the things that the party has done, it's done it in the past, but not to the level to where we're at today. We have set up a voter protection team in DTP, the Texas Department, the Texas Democratic Party, that is the largest voter protection team in the country. We have a lawyer on staff that works only on, we're hiring a lawyer that's going to be only working on voter protection issues where voters run into problems. Just pick up the phone on a toll-free number, and we'll have a team of people that are available to assist them, and then lawyers also to take whatever action necessary to make sure that these people, that our folks are allowed to vote. We've got a team of people answering questions, interfering, calling elections officials, getting people to be allowed to vote, and so forth. So that was pretty successful in 2020. We've increased, probably double the size of that team. We've got a large grant from different entities to hire more people to actually do that. So we're hoping that we can anticipate the problems that may occur in the 2022 election, to where people won't have as many problems, or if they do, there'll be easy assistance available to them at the time of the election. Those are just some of the problems that people experienced this last election. You know, we're going to be prepared for that. We understand that it affected turnout substantially, but we know that we are not just going to sit around and wait for it to happen again. We're setting up a plan to be able to resolve those issues.
So Gilberto, tell us about our chances in the next election.
Well, let's look at where we're at and where we've come. And then I think that if we can get past this malaise that's out there, for whatever reason there is, I think that we have a good chance of succeeding. In every election cycle from the last 8 years, we have increased our performance substantially. In 2020, we had a 30% increase in our performance statewide. We were second in the nation in increased performance. In even those state house districts that we didn't win, the ones we had targeted, our increase in turnout in those districts exceeded the highest turnout that any Republican had ever achieved in those districts that were gerrymandered for Republicans. In other words, the votes that we got for our candidates in those districts was higher than the incumbent Republicans in those districts that were gerrymandered for Republicans had ever gotten. What happened is that we got outspent at the end by $200 million statewide, and it was really difficult to fight that back. But if you follow the trends for the last 8 years, you will see that the constant increase in turnout gets us closer and closer and closer to a win number. I mean, we lost with Joe Biden by 5.5 points. We lost with Hillary Clinton by 9.5 points. 4 years before that, we lost with Barack Obama somewhere around 20 points in 2012. So every year we've cut in half our margins to the point where we have gotten much closer than before. When Beto ran in 2016, he lost by 250,000 votes. We've registered 2 million people since 2016. And so we think that given the enthusiasm level in that campaign, which I think will raise all boats, we have a good chance of winning. And Beto is out there working. He's recruiting volunteers. He's raising a whole lot of money. He's already starting programs along the border where he's putting together get out the vote programs and voter registration programs. The party is going to be starting voter registration programs also in some of the same areas where we have contested congressional districts and House districts where the Republicans have gerrymandered to make it a little bit more difficult for us to win. We're raising more money than we've ever raised before, and for a midterm election cycle. So everything points to us doing better, which means if we're doing better in 2022, we get to the win number because we're very close to the win number. We've got a great slate of candidates that are running right now. Just remember, if you can go back to 2016, or maybe even before that, I'm sorry, to 2018 or maybe before that, when Beto ran, he had crowds at the beginning of the campaign of 8 or 9 people at a bar in Beaumont, Texas, right? He ended with 4,000 people rallies and pop-up rallies during early vote of 300 or 400 people in the middle of an early vote location. He started that way this time around. In other words, he started where he left off last time, which the momentum that he has built, I think, puts him in a good position. And then we've also experienced some of the horrible things from the Republican administration, to the likes that we had not seen to that extent before. We were always complaining about their deep underfunding of education and the refusal to accept expanded Medicaid, or the refusal to provide adequate funding for our universities to be able to allow kids to be able to go to college, and the low wages, keeping everybody at a minimum wage and so forth. But they've engaged in some colossal messes since then. On top of all of that, I mean, the failure of the grid a year ago, where 821 people died across the state of Texas, froze to death as a result of the fact that they were not willing to impose strict requirements on weatherizing these power plants and the fuel pipelines that were providing fuel to these power companies, only to make sure that their friends who were giving them these huge campaign contributions wouldn't get upset at them. And that created this huge problem that they had been warned would occur, that causes disaster and left millions of people without power and killed hundreds of people. That was a colossal mess and failure on their part. Their handling of COVID at the very beginning was a huge mess. I mean, people died in huge numbers along the Rio Grande Valley because they were not willing to warn people or do the things necessary to protect them. In fact, they stopped our elected officials in Democratic counties from imposing mask mandates, from trying to encourage people to distance themselves and so forth. And that created a worse problem. And then they didn't get the vaccinations out to the public in time. That was, again, a colossal failure by this administration. The stuff that they have been doing on the border, I mean, people don't realize that as a result of what they have done in the border by placing the National Guard, we have had the largest number of suicides among National Guardsmen in the history of the United States along the Rio Grande border, because of the fact that they have put these soldiers on the border. These are National Guardsmen. They are not full-time soldiers. They are people that have jobs. They make money to support their families, to pay their mortgages. They're home with their families every single day after work. Now they're stationed over there with very reduced pay. They're losing their houses. They're losing their cars, and they have nothing to do but just sit there. And they formed a union as a result of this. And over and over and over, the way they've handled this thing has been a huge, huge, huge mess. Look at what they're doing today with education. I mean, the way they're discouraging teachers from returning to the job site is creating a huge crisis in our school systems. So one thing after another has left them, I think, vulnerable in this election cycle to be beat. People are very unhappy with Greg Abbott. All he does is spend his time doing political stuff and making decisions based upon politics. This evil thing that they did with transgender children. What he doesn't understand is that transgender children have parents, have cousins, have aunts and uncles, have neighbors, and they care for them. These are the most vulnerable children in the entire state of Texas. And for him to go after them and punish families and scare the hell out of families is something that is creating just a huge wave of discontent among a lot of people in the state of Texas. And I think it's seen by people as such as something plain flat out mean. I think that's going to affect him at the end of the day, because he's not doing this because it's the right thing to do. He's doing this for political leverage in and keeping his right-wing base where he wants them to be. So all these things combined, plus many other things that this governor has done, and his right-wing attorney general, who is under indictment, and it's been under indictment since he took office, and is probably going to get indicted again by a federal grand jury, I think is creating significant problems for Republicans. What our goal is, we've got to energize folks. We got to get back on track. We've got to get people to believe that we can win this election. I mean, the Republicans what they have done is that they have tried to, paint Joe Biden as someone that's bad and created inflation in the United States, and so we need to put in Republicans to block him from being able to do what he's been doing. Well, heck, what people don't understand, if they need to be reminded, is that we have the lowest unemployment rate that we've had in 75 or 80 years, at 3.8. People are working now. That's one of the reasons why we have inflation, because people have money and they're spending their money because they had a program where they help people come out of the COVID crisis, but they're working. They weren't working before. We have high gas prices today, but we all know why that's happening. And we also have a president that has shown incredible leadership during this Ukrainian crisis and the war, that I think people are changing their attitude towards him. So we need to continue to say, our folks are doing far better than Mr. Trump was doing, or we call him Putin-loving Trump, was doing when he was president, and we need to continue to praise him. We need to be proud of the administration that is running this country today, and use that plus everything else that we've done as Democrats to encourage people to believe that we can win this election. I believe we can win it. We've got a great slate of candidates, and we've got people that are out there working their heart out. Texas today, if you didn't know this, 70% of the people in this state today live in democratically controlled counties. That means we're moving forward. If you don't believe that, then tell me why the Republicans passed the voter suppression law. If they were winning, why did they do that? The reason they did that was because they knew they were losing control of the state. Today, I mean, look what's happened. Dallas County after 2022 will not have a single Republican elected official in the entire county. Won't have a county commissioner, won't have a constable, won't have a JP. Not one. This is the 6th largest county in country. Harris County will have 1 Republican county commissioner, 1 Republican JP, and 1 Republican constable. Before 2018, the Republicans controlled the commissioner's court, had almost all the countywide officials that were Republicans. Now they have nothing. Fort Bend County, right next door, Tom DeLay's home. Guess what? They didn't have a single Republican countywide elected official in 2018. Right after this election cycle, 4 out of the 5 commissioners will be Democrats, and every single countywide elected official is going to be a Democrat. San Antonio is the same thing. So all across the state of Hays County, Williamson County has a Democratic sheriff. Hays County has a Democratic county judge. They were red for who knows how long, and they've moved in the 2 state representatives that are Democrats in Williamson County. So, and another one in Hays County. So more and more you're seeing large urban areas are being controlled by Democrats. They control the election process. And I just think if we can run the numbers up in those large urban areas, do better in some of the rural areas that we have been doing in the past, we get to the win number. And then we've got the best candidate we could possibly have running for governor.
Well, Gilberto, I think that we had another one of our wonderful Democratic candidates. I think she's in a runoff. Monique Bracy Huff, are you there? You want to give us a little bit of background about yourself?
You're correct. I am here. I'm sorry. I was driving to a fundraiser event. Let me just do a little pullover. Okay, here we go. Yes. Good evening, all. I am Monique Bracy Huff. I am in the runoff. So I'm asking for everyone to return to the polls on May 24th. I'm running for judge of Dallas County Criminal Court number 10, which is a misdemeanor court, but it is a specialty court, and in the fact that it is a family violence court. And I'm the only candidate on the ballot who has actually worked in domestic violence shelters, answered crisis counseling hotlines, answered those emergency calls when the police called and they had a family that needed a safe place to stay. And then I've got 13 years of legal experience defending individuals that have been charged with family violence offense. So I believe that this is the court that I'm called to, and I'm asking for everyone to return to the polls on May 24th so we can continue to not only just keep Dallas County a Democratic county like was being talked about, but also to support a candidate I think that is the best candidate for this bench. So Monique Bracy Huff for Dallas County Criminal Court number 10. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other candidates who joined us since then? Gilberto, we have several questions from people who are interested. Someone said, I keep hearing about Repubs taking over RGV and organizing. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I do.
I bet you do.
This is a media created crisis. I live in the Rio Grande Valley, right? I have been an elected official down here for 23 years, serving as a school board member, county court of law judge, a district judge. I was a court of appeals judge, a county judge here for 12 years. And I represented the entire Rio Grande Valley at one time or another as an elected official. And I'm originally from Hidalgo County, born and raised in Mission, born in Alamo. What they have used is two things. One, to say that we're in trouble. One, they're using the results of the presidential election in 2020. Well, what happened in that election, as we well know, is that during the debate, Joe Biden said that he was going to eliminate fossil fuels in the future. When he did that, we lost a big chunk of Mexican-American voters that have always voted Democrat for the presidential election, who work in the oil and the energy industry, in Dilley, Texas, and all around that part of Texas and the fracking stuff, where people used to go down here up north to the fields to work because there was no work anymore. And now they go to the oil and fracking fields of the southwest Texas and work in that. And so they scared people in that area. The issue of this defund the police also affected us a lot. We have somewhere around 18 or 20,000 Border Patrol agents in the Rio Grande Valley. They've married into families in the Rio Grande Valley. They've got, there's deputy sheriffs, constables, school police, all these people in law enforcement also got freaked out about that defund the police thing that was going on. So what it did was it affected the presidential election results. Every single Democrat in the Rio Grande Valley won by huge numbers. Since then, and they talk about little counties where there was about 2 small counties like Zapata County. Zapata County probably has 4,000 people in it, right? Total. They won Jim Wells County, which has about 16,000 people in it. Only with Trump, right? Every other elected official that ran as a Democrat ran. Since then, you know how many Republicans how many Democrats have switched parties in the Rio Grande Valley? This is a 1.5 million people in the Rio Grande Valley. One. And that was a state representative whose district was gerrymandered into a Republican district, right? That's it. Every county judge, every county commissioner, every sheriff, every DA, every constable, every JP is running for office as a Democrat. The other example that that's just absolutely not supported by the facts. They speak about the mayor of McAllen. Okay, Mayor McAllen is a Republican, is what they say. Well, the mayor of McAllen is my friend. I've known him for 20 years. This guy doesn't have a political philosophy. He was a county chair in Hidalgo County for the Republican Party 20 years ago. He ran for mayor it's a nonpartisan election. It was a Mexican American running against a woman with an Anglo last name in a city that's 85% Mexican American. That was one of the reasons why he won. This woman had also been charged with hit and run crimes and stuff. So he basically walked into this. You know when the last time I saw the mayor of McAllen was? He was speaking at the Democratic fundraiser, Hidalgo County Democratic fundraiser in McAllen. So this is a fallacy that somehow the Republicans are taking over here. They've opened up offices. Those offices are closed all the time. There's nobody in them at all. So that simply is not happening. But not to say that we're not taking it. We're not taking it seriously. We're putting efforts down here. I've got 3 people working in South Texas, full-time regional political managers all across South Texas that are going to be working to make sure that we are in contact with, we're going to have voter registration programs focusing on House District 15, which is a district that had been gerrymandered to make it a much closer district. We think we can still win that district. We'll hold on to our Senate district and our House districts that they also gerrymandered. I don't know if we can pick up that House district that they gerrymandered into a Republican district, but we're going to give it a run for our money. And so I think we're going to be fine, but we're not, there's a lot of people who live down here. We want to make sure that we not harvest, but get as many, I shouldn't use the word harvest, get as many Democratic votes out to run up our numbers statewide. So I think we're going to be fine down here. And let's not forget one critical fact. There are more Mexican Americans in Houston, twice as many Mexican Americans in Houston than there is in the Rio Grande Valley. There are more Mexican Americans, and they're Democrats, all of them. That's why one of the reasons why you saw Harris County flip so dramatically in 2018 and 2020. Dallas County, from where you're from, there are more Mexicans in Dallas County than there is in the Rio Grande Valley. That's why you saw Dallas County in 2004 elect a Mexican American woman to be sheriff, and everything after that was uphill or downhill for Republicans, uphill for Democrats. So they are making a difference in this state. There's just a lot of noise that happened in the Rio Grande Valley.
Thank you. Gilberto, talking about gerrymandering, we got a few questions ahead of time, and one was, I'm wondering, as there are many others, I'm sure, is there any hope that the gerrymandered districts will be changed before 2030, or is this something we have to live with?
Well, I mean, let's just go back to 2 years or 4 years. We picked up 12 gerrymandered districts in 2012. 12 districts that had been gerrymandered to elect Republicans for a long time. We held on to every single one of those districts except for one in 2020 when the Trump all across the country was able to increase turnout and prevent us from picking up any state houses. We were one of the few states that did not lose state houses. So that was the first layer of gerrymandered districts that we encountered, and we won and we held on to them. The second layer of gerrymandered districts is the ones that I told you about, that 9 that we surpassed all the numbers that we had that Republicans had ever got to, but we didn't get to the magic number because of the enormous money that was spent by the Republicans when they thought they were going to lose. So I think the same thing applies with the districts that are out there that they've gerrymandered. What they did was they tried to protect the districts that they had instead of creating new Republican districts across the state of Texas. They did that because they knew they were about to lose these other districts. But what they don't recognize, what people don't understand, is that there's been a huge migration in the state of Texas. People from the East Coast and the West Coast are coming into places like the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And those districts that they tried to protect, they can't stop the migration of people coming into those districts. And they're not voting automatic Republican like most native Texans have voted in the past. They're voting much more Democrat. They don't have that Republican label. We're spending part of one of the programs that we're engaged in right now that was very successful for us in 2018 was to identify people who have migrated into Texas and registering them in Texas. In 2018, I believe there was 4. We did that. Glenn Maxey created this program and registered somewhere around 180,000 people who moved into the state of Texas. The increase in the number of new voters from registered, from people who came into the state of Texas that we registered was the margin in 4 of the House districts of the 12 districts that we picked up. And so we're going to continue to do that. I'm not willing to say that we're going to have a hard time picking up those districts. We got great candidates. You heard one speak just a little while ago. And that kind of dynamic candidate, I think, is able to attract voters across every line out there in terms of making sure that we talk about the things that are important to families. It doesn't matter what your ethnic background or where you come from. It matters simply whether or not you're offering good government with ideas that are going to make their schools better, that's going to ensure that people have a right to go to college, that we have better health care for our community. And if we continue to elect candidates like Ms. Hernandez, who is running right now, that's the kind of candidate that I think is going to get voters to vote for them in districts that the Republicans thought that we're going to be able to hold on to.
Okay, just a few more questions. What is the party doing to keep previous candidates who did not win their election involved in the party? Specifically, this person is asking about statewide candidates like MJ Hager, who had, name recognition, but nobody knows about her anymore.
Well, you got to want to stay involved, right? Remember when Mike Collier lost in 2018 he lost in he ran from 2014, I'm sorry. He ran for state controller. I remember he walked into during the filibuster, Winnie's filibuster, he walked into the office that we were manning strategies at the Capitol, and he said, "Hey, my name is Mike Collier, and I want to run for state controller." And the first question I asked him is, "Are you a Democrat or are you a Republican?" And he said, "I'm a Democrat." He said, "Well, I'm going to run as a Democrat," is what he said. Well, he lost that election. And what he did was he decided that he was going to continue to be involved. And he went and we, mostly with his own money, did a statewide listening tour of Democrats all across rural areas and urban areas in the state of Texas to talk to Democrats, to find out from them, what do we need to do to become a better party? He stayed involved because he wanted to stay involved. So you've got people like that who continue to be involved and to want to ensure that we get the party strong. You can't make people do something unless they want to do it. And there's a lot of Mike Colliers out there who want to continue to be involved, want to continue to be candidates. We've got a couple of candidates right now that are running for statewide office that have run in other elections. Our candidate for state controller, one of the candidates, I don't know if she won without a runoff, but she ran for Congress last time around. So there's people out there that are continuing to get involved, or they run again, and they'll get elected eventually, I think.
Okay. And if anybody has a question, put it in the chat, because it's going to be just a few minutes and you're going to be cut off. But anyway, I have a couple more questions. What is the Texas Democratic Party doing to nurture and promote candidates that can win statewide?
Well, we do recruit people before people start jumping in to try to encourage them to run. I don't think there's any secret, much to the dismay of some other folks, that I was pushing Beto to run for governor early on, because I just thought that Beto would be our best shot at winning the governor's seat. It's very hard nowadays. It's much more difficult nowadays to recruit candidates, not because there's not people that want to run, it's because there's always a lot of people now that want to run. And for us to recruit somebody, we're saying to the people that have already run, well, we don't like you, we want somebody else. And that's kind of putting the thumb on the scale that we shouldn't. That to some extent has happened in the past, and it created problems within the party, and we're just careful about that. When we do have situations where we don't have people running for a statewide office that will fill the ticket, then we do recruit people. We do that, for example, in the Supreme Court races and the Court of Criminal Appeals races. We start calling people and recruiting them. But nowadays, we always have people running. Where we probably didn't do enough this time around, just simply because of the transition that occurred early in the year, is we left more state house seats unopposed than we have in the past. Not a lot more, but it was less than 2018, and some state Senate seats. And last time around, we had every congressional seat filled. We have a couple of them we didn't fill this time around. And that's just something that happened because we just didn't have it. I lost my entire team almost within a 3-month period, and we just been trying to rebuild the party since that time.
Okay, here's a question. Why doesn't the chairman use social media more? His last Facebook page was February 9, and his last tweet was September of 2020. Tell us about you and social media, Gilberto.
Well, I'm on Facebook every day. I mean, I don't know. I have my own personal account.
I can only tell you the question. I don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Facebook all the time. What I'm not on a lot is on Twitter, because Twitter, people fight and get nasty and do all sorts of stuff, and it's not something that I enjoy that much. But I'm on Facebook every single day. I spend a lot of time sending out, sharing posts and putting my own posts and telling people where I'm at. And then the party has a full-time person that is managing our social media program. We have a huge social media presence the party does, in Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and we have to contact a lot of people. One of the things that we're going to start doing is we're going to increase our social media presence on certain themes on a weekly basis, where we're going to be hitting the Republicans really hard on things. For example, what's happening today with Judge Jackson, the racist and just mean attacks that the Republicans have engaged in, the flat out lies. We're going to hit them hard about what they're doing to this wonderful jurist who is more qualified than most any other candidate for the Supreme Court that we've ever seen. So we're going to up the level of attacks on Greg Abbott as well, to make sure that people are reminded every single day of his massive failures since he's become governor. And so the party is engaged in a big social media presence. I do my little thing on my Facebook page. I don't do, like I said, and I have a party Facebook page that the party manages primarily. I have my own that I do on my own separately.
Well, we really appreciate your time, Gilberto. What is the one thing you would like to tell all these people that they will remember about where our party is going forward?
Well, I think that they need to believe that that we are succeeding and getting stronger every day. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. You know, we, as I mentioned before, our improvement is significant every single year. Every single year election cycle, we have increased our performance. We've spent a lot of time not just helping the local party organizations, the county party organizations get the resources that they need to get stronger, to recruit candidates to run elections, but we're also recruiting people in local elections. We've got the Project Live program where we recruit candidates all across the state of Texas and train them to run for city council, city commission, school board, college boards, you know, the different type of local governments for a couple of reasons. Democrats do a better job than Republicans at every level of government, including local government. And secondly, that creates the bench that you need to elect to get people the experience and the exposure to become the state representatives, the state senators, the congresspersons, the county commissioners, the county judges. I mean, that's where I started. I started on the school board and ended up being on the Court of Appeals and being a county judge in my community and eventually running for chair. So I think people need to continue to help in their own communities build a party. The party is not what we're in Austin. That's not the Texas Democratic Party. We're the Texas Democratic Party. Every club, every county party organization, every Senate district organization, the individuals that are actually involved as volunteers throughout the state of Texas in different parts of the state of Texas, that's the party. So the more people that are engaged, the stronger our party gets. And the best example is what happened after Donald Trump got elected. When he got elected, what happened in this state was a transformation of an attitude by people who in the past had not been engaged. An understanding that things like this, like Donald Trump getting elected, happen because good people don't go out there and make a difference in their communities. And the guilt feeling that people were experiencing after he got elected caused them to become much more engaged, not just as candidates, but as people supporting candidates. And they got out there and started forming organizations, started organizing, started getting involved in elections to a level that we had never seen before. That needs to continue because the threat to our democracy still exists. What Republicans are trying to do to stay in power is insidious, and it's something that is ongoing, and they're not ever going to stop. They are wanting to create a different kind of democracy that we have never seen, the likes of which we haven't seen in over 100 years. And we have to stop that. And the only way we stop that is if we continue to become involved. We have the confidence that we can win because we have won, because we're doing better, because we're performing at every level of government in the state of Texas. But the only way we get to the win number is if we continue to push at a higher level every single day. And that's what organizations like the North Dallas Democratic Women Organization can contribute. That's what every single party organization, that's what every precinct chair can contribute. So I'm confident that we can succeed. I believe we can win. We just got to believe in our own mind that we'll be able to win and translate that belief and that faith that we have into action. And we can get Beto O'Rourke elected governor, and whoever is going to be our nominee for attorney general, elected attorney general, and down the line. And I think things will change. Once we open that door, once we punch a hole in that wall that they created, I think dam's going to break and you're going to see Texas turn blue very, very quickly. And it's going to stay that way. That's what happened in Dallas. That's what happened in Houston. That's what happened in San Antonio. That's what's happened in every county that punched that hole in that wall. And eventually the Republicans couldn't hold it back.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And just to let everybody on the call know, our next meeting will be April 28th. We're going to have the candidates for Dallas County Commissioner, Place 2, Andrew Summerman and Michelle Oker, who are going to come and talk to us. And we are going to try to have a live meeting at Rockfish Restaurant, depending on what happens with COVID, because everybody seems to want to get back in person and talk. So we hope to see you then. And then we probably won't have a meeting in May. We will have our usual summer party in early June, and would love to see you all there too. So thank you all for attending. Thank you so much, Gilberto, for giving your time and talking to us about what's going on. And I hope everybody has a wonderful night.
And for those of you that came in late or have friends that weren't able to see this, we have recorded it. It'll probably be up on our YouTube channel sometime tomorrow, but we will be sending out notifications to everyone that received the notification about the meeting tonight that it's up on the channel. So look forward to that.
And again, thank you, Gilberto. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Good night,
Night.
all.
Night.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.